Welcome to the All-Woman Father's Day Roundtable Forum. I'm Garth Williams, and I'm joined both in person, online, and recorded by a number of, I would consider, great Jamaican dads. And it's our sincere pleasure to talk through some fatherhood issues with all these gentlemen who are experienced in their various fields. And I will just introduce them very quickly. We've got attorney Alex Shaw. We've got bank manager and financial stalwart Peter Mohan. David Goodlitt, very difficult to describe you, but you're a man of God, a father, and a mover and a shaker in your own right. Did I get that correct, sir?
I hope so.
I sincerely hope so too. Jayson Downer, who your program Raising Boys, is it?
Raising Boys on a Journey to Manhood.
Raising Boys on a Journey to Manhood and the Journey to Manhood. Amazing gentleman who is also an educator in an all-boys institution, the Jamaica College.
Well, put it this way, life skills coach, if you want to put it.
Life skills coach. Thank you very much for helping me to say that so succinctly. Mr. Hardie, Dr. Hardie, I almost said ventriloquist, gynecologist. Joins us as well. We're so happy to have you with us. Online, Jesse Royal, musician and recording artist. Jesse, I remember when you did Missionary. I think that was the name of the mixtape from back in the day. Yeah, I still rock that. Here, still have that. So, and you've recently joined us as a father of a newborn. So we're very happy to have you as well. Of course, Christopher Johnny Daley. You will hear from him a little later on in our discussion. And also we'll be joined by Major Basil Jarrett, who is a communications specialist and of course a father, as we all are. So let's get into our conversation, gentlemen, because this journey of fatherhood is an interesting one, and if nothing else, it makes you grow. Yes. If nothing else, you must grow. Whether you're good at being a dad or you're bad at being a dad, some level of growth has to take place in your life. But let's get to the real beginning, because fathers play a vital role in our children's well-being from the start. Experts say it's important for us as men to step up and be good fathers even before the babies are born, which is why we have Dr. Hardie here with us. As an OBGYN, Dr. Hardie, you'd be aware of this all too well. Research has shown that even in the womb, babies they're responding to their parents' voices and moods and activities. So let's begin with you. How important is it for us to step up and be good dads even before they come out, the babies come out? And what can we do, and what can expecting fathers do for their partners to support them during pregnancy?
Okay, well, firstly, thank you for having me, and thank you for that question. So a pregnancy is a journey. During a pregnancy, a woman goes through so many changes, both physically, emotionally, psychologically. So it is vitally important that men play an important role during this moment. From conception, there is that moment of excitement that she would like to have somebody to share it with. Through the first trimester, which is often associated with such as morning sickness, as it is affectionately referred to. And in the second and third trimesters, her body now begins to change. She now begins to look different. She now has concerns about her image, the impending delivery. Are you going to be there at the delivery? Will she be okay during the delivery? It's very important that our father is there to support her during this journey.
Yeah. Gentlemen, one of the things that I remember about, that I have two children. My daughter is 12, my son is 8. But that first pregnancy, my wife was, I don't know, honey, I love you, but crazy.
Disclaimer.
No, she wanted cheese. Like cheese was her thing. She just had this massive craving for cheese. And well, that's just one of the things. I won't go into everything because I still need to go home and sleep in the bed with her, right? But for you gentlemen, and I'm going to start with Jesse online. When Candy was coming forward, what were some of the most interesting requests that she had during the pregnancy?
Well, to be honest, She doesn't demand much, but I can tell you that the amount of foot rubs that I had to give definitely raised, and the amount of back rubs and back scratches, because as you said, it's a time where are you hearing me?
Yeah, man, we're
Yeah,
hearing
we're
you.
hearing you.
Can you hear me? Yeah, so
Yeah, yeah.
as you said, it's a time where we are experiencing the situation, but we're experiencing it from a completely different perspective. So for me, it is more of supporting, watching, and almost reacting to what needs to be done. Because, like you said, they're going through things that they don't even understand. There'll be
Yeah.
mood swings that they don't even know are coming. You know, there'll be um, things and just perspectives and memories and things that happen at times that them not expect, and it affects them in ways that we can't truly understand. But it's important for us to validate their feelings, you know what I mean, and just at least understand. Say, okay, we don't understand, but I'm going to trust you to help me to help you.
Yeah, and I want to kind of follow up on something with you because your child is very young. What, 5 months or reach five
Yeah,
months
so
yet?
I have two daughters. My
Right,
first daughter is 4 years old,
right,
and my second daughter is 5 months old.
right. So with this 5 month old, it means that you would have gone through the pandemic. This was a pandemic pregnancy, so to speak, right?
Yeah,
So
delivery.
just how
Well, yeah.
how was that journey for you as an expecting father and for her as an expecting mother during this period?
Well, if we're being honest, there were times where we were like, I wish you would just not be here right now, you know. But the reality is, there was still, it was good. For me, I would normally be touring. I would normally be somewhere else in the world, and you realize that in them times, like, they really need the support, like, in so many different ways. So, like, it was actually an opportunity for me to step up in other ways, you know what I mean, and just literally support, you know what I mean, like, that was just the main thing for me, not trying to, because I'm not trying to push my perspective or tell her what to do. Just as me I say, observe and figure out how to support and make this journey the best that it can be. Because I'm a firm believer in energy. You know what I mean? And I feel like, you know, the children are already being formed before they physically become, you know what I mean, human. So it's like the little seed of energy. I mean, so them good vibes, them good vibrations, the type of songs that we play, you know what I mean, the type of moods, what you know what I mean, all of them things that I feel like is a big part of why even Chorus smiles as much as she does now, you know?
Yeah, I'm gonna come back to you, Jesse, but I had thrown out a question about the different types of requests. My wife was all about the cheese. How about you, gentlemen? What did your partners have any strange or odd odd requests? As say Alex, trying to get in.
I don't think it's that odd, but
Well, she always wanted Burger King fries, and she wanted them very hot. So to get from wherever I was to, get her the fries very hot, it was sometimes challenging. And it was during the time when pretty much, the stores were closing much earlier than usual. And so, because the COVID-19 period. So it was...
You're also another...
yes, my daughter, yes, and crab. Yes.
So beef fries and
I had
crab.
I had to hunt down crab anywhere. I remember one night I wanted
Well,
to
there's a
even go
beacon
to...
near Crossroads, so
Well,
near Hero Circle.
but where I live compared to where, to get to her, it was a little difficult. But, those were the two requests that she had mostly.
Any other odd requests? I mean, fries and crab really kind of somewhere up there. No?
Mine wasn't odd. For me, it wasn't an odd request. It's like mangoes.
Mangoes.
Yeah, so I wouldn't consider it to be odd. Yeah, well,
In the season.
well, you have a good point there. In the season, if it was out of season, then you would have to find it wherever it's at. But I do understand, based on what they're sharing from all the other gentlemen in terms of that craving, and being the first time, because my son is 16 now, so you'd have to find it wherever it's at.
Yeah.
And to satisfy whatever the desire is, and we go above and beyond to make sure that's possible.
Yeah. Now, with newborns, it's always very interesting. Jesse has a newborn. His daughter is 4. His first daughter is 4. He has a newborn. Alex, you have a newborn. How old is your daughter?
She's almost 8 months.
Almost 8 months. My daughter is 12. So I haven't, my son is 8. I have not handled a newborn for at least the past 8 years, right? But let me talk to Jesse and Alex as new fathers. Just describe this, your feeling now as a new dad. You're just adjusting to it. I mean, obviously you'd have been there for the journey, but let me hear from you, Alex, about your experience so far with infancy.
To be honest, it has changed my entire world. Now, so I could stay at the office some long hours, preparing for cases. I can't.
Yeah.
I can't take home any work now, especially because whenever I reach home, she wants daddy, right? And mommy will just take her to me. Come, daddy, she wants you. I said, so I am now forced to adjust because imagining it is different from actually being in the reality. Having to deal with the cries at night. And who should get up? We're accustomed to sleeping at least 8 hours undisturbed. No, we have to go at least 3. So it's it has changed my world, as I said before, and I'm learning as I go along, because pretty much there's no blueprint. Whilst I can emulate, your good fathers, what you have laid out before, it's really much. A test and run, to see how best I can do it. And so far, I think I'm doing well.
Yeah. Come on, big up. Good. Yeah, sure. Jump in, Jason.
I have a 12-year-old looking like 16, and I have twins. I have twin boy and girl, 5-year-olds, and I'm still traumatized. Yeah, traumatized by what my wife went through, natural birth. So that the miracle of birth in itself, and just the nights when she had to breastfeed both children.
Yeah.
It caused me, seeing being a part of the whole labor experience is one thing, but also to be up in the night and see what you go through. To the point when they get old and past that phase, when I hear baby crying, I jump up still. It's that, But as Virgin said, it really changes one's perspective. And even if you admire women, your ratings go up even way more.
Yeah.
Just for what they go through. You know what I mean?
True. Jesse, your daughter is very young, 5 months. Your second daughter, that is. And your older daughter is 4, so you weren't too far off from the newborn stage by the time this one came around. But as a man who has to, the world is now starting to slowly open up, so which means you'll be on tour soon, which means you're in the studio, you just released an album, which means that there was a lot of work going on as well. Just kind of explain to us that balance that you'd have to find to be in the studio, be at home, helping mommy, getting ready to go back on tour, all of that with a newborn.
Yeah, so it's definitely a conversation that had to be had, and something that had to be understood with my partner, because if you know Candy is also a super active individual. She runs her businesses. She's a director for a carnival band, and she also does consulting for a lot of other companies. So finding a way to, all right, balance the whole, everybody has to still, because we still believe that we're not going to sacrifice our careers or our identities for parenting. We feel like they don't take from our lives, they add to our lives. They add inspiration, them add vibrations. And like I always say, parents don't teach children how to be children. Children teach us how to be parents and how to handle them. And when you approach it that way, it's a little bit easier in the sense where so my industry might feel me late night regardless. So Candy does most of the thing through the day, but once nighttime hit, then I'm up until the 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. Now I must say that chorus does sleep through the night, you know what I mean, which is something that we're super grateful for. You know what I mean? I mean, she had her little regression, I think, like, the fourth month where, you know what I mean, you have to start sleep training them, which is also a next rough part. But
Right.
Candy very focused on that, and she's very, very diligent with that effort. So I was able to go to the studio and do my creating and then come back and fill the gap and make her rest. You know what I mean? So it's like we found a way how to work seamlessly, because it's not as easy as people make it sound. You know what I mean? Parenting is not this easy task where, yes, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You know what I mean? It's so many different things, happenings, dynamics, situations that come up. There'll be times where Candy's doing Candy's at work and I'm walking outside with chorus, and I'm not Jesse Royal at that moment. I'm just her dad. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And I'm
that's
her
right.
dad, supporting her mom and allowing her mom to also be herself. Because for me, that's important for the child, but also for our relationship. You know what I mean? Because I met Candy. You know what I mean? So it's not like you met mommy. You know what I mean? I met
Right.
Candy, and we have to maintain that relationship so that even our child grows up with that same energy that we feel is important for people who we are going to send out into the world to make some change, you know?
Right. Now, we just heard Jesse talk about that work-life balance, right?
Men operate. I don't know, how many people do know, but men operate with departments. So there's a department for this and a department for that. I think it came naturally. My kids knew that Chris, the daddy, is the daddy. I mean, that's who they meet first. They don't know me as the comedian until they grow up and realize that, oh, that's what my father actually does. And so they meet daddy first, So I don't worry about the separation of them understanding who I am. What I try to do is to let them understand what I do, so that they can understand that when I'm out, when I'm not with them, when the challenges of being a father and working, clash with personally being there for them, that they understand that that's why daddy's missing, or that's why daddy's doing that, or that's why daddy's involved in that business. So yeah, what I like to is they enjoy me be the comedian. I like to, especially my older children, I like to take them to the shows, so they see not just what I do on stage, but what I do off stage. That they understand the preparation that goes into it, and so they understand that this is a career and something that is serious. The audience only get the 10 minutes or the 15 minutes or the half an hour that they see or they enjoy. But my children see a lifetime of preparation.
Let's hear from David and Peter. Peter, banking can really take over your life. I know certainly my bank take over my life, and I'm not a banker. But how do you balance the parenthood with the your work requirements?
I think in the earlier stage, when they were younger, it demanded a lot more of you. As they get older, it's a little bit different, where they understand what you do. So now it's not so much an issue, but you still have to find that time for bonding to take place. So for me, what I do, they know I like to watch movies. So on Sundays, they know everybody is in the living room, and we find a movie that is able to be watched by everyone. Mm-hmm. And that's the bonding time where we talk about the movie. While it's in a movie, I always say, in a movie form, it's not far from the truth. So I use that as a learning moment for them as well, that they see, okay, if it's happening in a movie, it's not far from the truth. And, so they are learning in the same process. So for me, I have a hectic job. I work, long hours, but I do find the time. I give my daughter credit, so we find time to go out in terms of, on vacation, and she's the one who picks the resort, yeah. So she goes online, and this is 11 years old, so she goes online and she will tell you, she go on the YouTube and she looks at, okay, that's the feedback for that, we'll go to that one, not that one. And when she goes, she's a navigator to say, we're going to go to that restaurant as against that one.
So you have an event planner.
So when I think about that, that's so awesome, So I take pride and joy whenever they say it's time for that vacation. I want to be there because I spend so much time at the office. Yeah. I want to give them some time when I'm there.
How about you, David?
I just want to give God thanks that children take 9 months and not 21 days like birds. And the reason for that is that, as was said before, your world is going to turn upside down. And we had some time to make some decisions. And one of the decisions is that we were going to homeschool. So my wife would stay home for the first 6 years.
Oh.
It never worked out. It just go up to 5. Right, it just go to 5. Right. It went up to 5. But I understand, because one of the things is that I too took some decisions that my family is going to be first. Doesn't matter what. And even if I have to work late, what I would do is cut the lunch time, come home, give the family time. After everything is settled, then I might go back and do the work.
Yeah.
Right? So I made up my mind to do that, and it was going on in place, but it took a toll on me, because especially in the first year, because I was there through all the process, in the room, watching the delivery and all of that sort of thing.
You never hold her hand though while she...
No, she hold my hand. And at one point in time, I couldn't feel the fingers. Yeah, because I had to be there coaching.
Yes.
You understand? Coaching. Don't push, don't push. She was there. Pull it out, pull it out, pull it out. But you had to there. No, they have to do their work and things. So that also impacted me.
Yeah, man.
And I decided I'm not going to put her through that again. So therefore, but going through that, so my daughter is a lover of nature. So what we would do is that we would find time on weekends. Sometimes we go over to Port Royal, carry the tent and everything. We pitch tent, we fish. We would look about the fish on the side and things like that. She loves to be wherever I am. And I promised myself that I would never ever tell my daughter that I am busy. Anytime she comes, I will never tell her that I'm busy.
Making time for her always.
Right, and also explain to her what I'm doing. And then she would come and understand, and she would ask, when will you be finished? And so forth. So that balance is there. Sometimes I would come and take her, and the mother would go with her friends and things like that, and I would stay. So that is how, because as the doctor would know, they would explain, what is it, postpartum depression. That is very real.
Yes.
And for a woman, and I understood it, if you don't have some support there, especially for the father support, it can lead the person to even kill the child. And I see why, because sometimes when my wife is going through certain things, I would just take the child, our friends would come over, take her, and they would go, and I would be there. While she wants to sleep, I'll be walking and singing whole night with the baby, especially when they are young and you don't want to hold them up straight. You have to bend your back, so you end up with back problem. It's a wonderful journey, believe me.
All of that said, it's a wonderful journey. Quickly from you, Jayson, and then we'll get to the doc. And I'm going to build on your point about postpartum depression with Doc when he responds. But how have you been able to? You have twins and an elder child, so that work-life balance, that with parenthood, how's that been going for you?
I mean, I have to learn it. I have a lot of mentors. I don't just have a mentor, I have mentors. So in different areas.
So man have mentor? How that works?
Of course. I mean, very important, especially for me. For one, I'm a minister. Yeah. 2, I'm a counselor. I do outreach in the prison. My responsibility at Jamaica College. It's a whole heap better though.
Right.
And so I have persons to help me to keep in line.
Right. Somebody counseling the counselor.
Yes, but also to pull me back when I go too much, to touch base with my wife, to say ensure that Jayson, and these are persons I deliberately open myself up to.
How did you select them?
Relationship is one. I don't believe you should just be assigned to a mentor. I can understand that in an organizational setting, but in terms of personal thing, it has to do with chemistry. And so a mentor also does not necessarily, he doesn't try to create a mini version of himself, but to facilitate my growth for me to be the best version of myself. So I have those persons, but to create the balance. Being at Jamaica College, I've seen where persons who are in the public space serving the country are a particular company or entity, and their family, their boys are neglected.
Right.
And I said to myself, I don't want that for my family. So one of the things I ensure to do is structure time, which is not easy, but I try to do that. And so I put things in place, boundaries, and try to meet that particular demand, because family is very important to me. And COVID has pretty much reminded me of that.
Yeah. Doc, that thin work-life balance.
Well, before I move to that question, I want to touch on something that a couple of the panelists have mentioned about being in the delivery room.
Sure.
If possible, I encourage all fathers to be in the delivery room. If you can manage it, we normally give you a form to sign that if you collapse, you are on your own.
And you're on the hospital's bookery.
It's like park at your own risk.
I stayed north.
Yeah. However, it is vital to the progress of labor and delivery, and for women who have the support of their partners in the delivery room, the delivery outcome is actually better. In this COVID time, some institutions may not facilitate that, but if the institution where your spouse is being delivered does, is something I encourage.
Paternity leave now is something's up and running.
And that's another discussion too. But
Yes.
we'll get there.
Yes.
Back to
Back to the original question. But I just wanted to include that because I thought that was very
No,
important.
and we appreciate that nugget that you shared just now, because we'll actually come back to it a little later on. As a gynecologist, babies are being born every day. People make babies every day.
Especially in a COVID.
So I know you must be happy now with this pandemic. Not so much the pandemic,
Business.
but it might be good for business. Who knows? But for you, Doc, I know that long list of patients is there, and also these are patients who they don't respect office hours necessarily because a baby comes whenever.
Yes.
How do you, as a dad, kind of ensure that you're a dad, but also there for your patients?
It is challenging. I will start with that. It is challenging. I try my best in organizing my office hours as best as possible. However, the outside office hours can be, they're open to change because somebody can go into labor at any point in time. My wife is very understanding. She's also a physician. But when you are around, you need to be around. And I think that helps to mitigate the times when, for those of us who are, I don't want to say essential, but emergency services or have to leave because of an emergency, then when you are around, when there is no emergency, you need to be there.
Yeah.
Interact. We read at night. I hear Jesse coming in because he may have to leave at night, so I guess in the day he is around.
Right.
And I think that helps. Right. And communication is important. Yeah. So like if I have patients coming up for delivery, I normally say, hey, I have a couple of patients that might require delivery soon. Right. So she's like on guard, she's aware.
Right. And one of the big things I get coming out of it is, as you just mentioned now, communication and planning. Yeah. It can't be haphazard.
No.
Right? You especially when we are as professionals, as people who are working, yeah? It is essential that we know our schedules, even though some schedules might be a little more ad hoc than others.
Yes.
But you know your schedule and you communicate with your partner, so at least you can make that time. Peter, for example, says he does his bonding primarily on a weekend, like on a Sunday, through movies, and that's a platform for having other conversations. And I think that's one of the main things that you have to think about as fathers, that it's important to communicate with your partners, it's important to plan everything. It might make you feel a little boring because, oh, all right, everything in our rows and columns now, but it's okay. Think about the child and think about your family, and then let that be the guide, even if you get a little boring, so to speak. Planning and communicating will help to solve a lot of problems. David brought up a very noticeable point, a very important point about postpartum depression. And since the microphone is with you, Doc, I'm going to just kind of ask you to build on that, because for a lot of us men, it is a bit of a mystery what postpartum depression is. Depression on a whole, because a lot of people, it's something in your head, you can't really see it. You can't see it in another person, except through probably some certain words or actions. But how can you identify postpartum depression, and can fathers do anything to limit its occurrence?
Okay, twofold. So how can you identify postpartum depression? So one of the things that you can look for as a new father is How does your spouse relate to the child? Does she want to be around the child? Is she increasingly more tearful? Does she want to be around you? Does she choose to be more away from the family? That is quite often a red flag. If she's more tearful, more sad, in severe cases, is she expressing suicidal or homicidal, infanticidal ideation? That is when you would need to get a mental health expert involved. Quite commonly, what we see is postpartum blues before the postpartum depression, where you do have some amount of sadness right after delivery and in the immediate postpartum period. But postpartum depression, as David mentioned, is quite common.
Yeah. What can we do?
The first thing, be supportive.
Yeah.
And this support starts prior to delivery, during the pregnancy period. Women who are involved in supportive relationships are less likely to experience postpartum depression. If they do go into postpartum depression, contact health experts, including a mental health expert. So don't feel offended if your obstetrician refers you to a psychiatrist. We try our best to initiate the counseling and screen and identify the patients who are most at risk. But if we believe that the patient is at significant risk, then we will refer you to a psychiatrist. It may also mean taking up more daddy duties. So that is also helpful. And it also may mean bringing in more help in the home. So grandmas if they are around, are vital. And aunts, and they say it takes a village to raise a child. During postpartum depression, you need every member of that village.
Right.
Makes a difference.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot for that. We're going to switch gears a little bit. How many of us here have daughters? I mean, Jesse's got two. Oh, yeah. We're all girl dads?
Yes. Boy and girl.
Well, but yeah, but
We're just dads.
No, so do you think, gentlemen, especially for you, Peter, myself, and Jason as well? Let's start with Peter though.
Jason too.
Yeah, man. Let's come to Jason, man. But why I'm going to start with Peter and you, Jason, is because you've got both, right? How different is it for you? And your children are growing. Well, that's their own, right? But how old are they? 16 and 12?
16 and 11.
16 and 11. Your daughter is 11?
Yes.
Right? All right, good. So, and your daughter, Jason, is 12?
She's 12 plus and 5 plus.
12 and 5. Good. Comparing the two, the boy and the girl, raising the boy and the girl, what is the difference that you would note so far as a father?
Well, there are two different individuals.
Right.
And when I think about raising a boy as against raising a girl, I think someone said it earlier, you have to raise your boy, let him know that emotional side, it's okay to cry. For instance, when you think about it, we are grown up in a society where this macho thing, where a male can't show his emotion. And you have to raise your boy in that fashion, let him know that it's okay to show your emotions, because when you do that, what you're doing, you're building a man that is going to be a good husband. Because what you find is happening now, we hear a lot of things in the media and you wonder where it all started, but it could have been from that outset, where in terms of what is it that parent did for that boy. And so for me, my son is a total different person from my daughter.
Right. And we're going to talk about the sons, raising sons in contemporary Jamaica. But
my daughter now, she's just a total different person. She's more independent. She is just a go-getter. She's more competitive than.
Are you more protective of her than your son, would you say?
And I guess that's normal for us dads, because we know what happens out there with the girls. Yes, we are worried. We are worried about everything, because we know what the men are doing out there, and as such, you want to make sure that your daughter is well protected. When you hear things happening out there in the society, a lot of dads, when it happens, I can tell you, mentally they're not prepared for it, and it will cause them to do silly stuff, because your daughter is like next to your heart.
Right.
So, my daughter is just, an awesome girl. She's, as I said, very competitive in nature. I mean, even to join a line, she doesn't want to be second. Yeah, it's that simple. At church, we get, for instance, communion, And when the line is ready to be formed, she positions herself and she's the first person in the line. It's just that simple. So, you know, sometimes I marvel to say,
How about in the back?
no, she tells me she don't want to work in the back. She said that her father is too stressed, and you know, when he comes home, he does work. So she wants to do, you know, other things. She wants to be an engineer, and you know, when I think about an architect, so I'm for that. So you allow them to live their dream.
Right.
You don't push them into what you want. You allow them to be what they want to be.
Jesse, as a member of the creative industry, you and a father of 2 daughters, I'm sure when you're on tour, you see a lot of things in the crowd. Off stage, you see a lot of things off stage. And you're aware of what happens just generally where lots of young people are gathered. Are you at all concerned, worried, anxious about raising 2 daughters in the society that you are currently a part of?
Definitely not. It's a beautiful world with a whole heap of good people. You know what I mean? I think sometimes we highlight the negativity a bit more, but there's a lot of good people in the world. There's a lot of loving people in the world. And then for me, having my 2 daughters reminded me how much me have to care about everybody else's child and everybody else's children. Because that is where we need to advance to as like parents, like understanding that, they come through us, like Khalil Gibran, brother named Khalil Gibran, him have a book called The Prophet. And him say, children come through us, but they don't belong to us. Children really are just like the universe longing for itself and replenishing itself. You understand? So they come through us, but they really don't belong to us. But it's a consciousness to understand that everybody's child is your child. Because like you say, I don't want my daughter to go out there and interact with a child that don't know love, or don't know respect, or don't know guidance, or don't know certain basic principles that every human being needs. So when we start rally around each other from the whole village perspective and understand, say, yo, your son and my daughter and your daughter. You understand? Because we can't wait until it reach the doorstep or reach the front line of the newspaper till we care about other people. Because if you look around, everybody is somebody's child.
True.
You know what I mean? We're all somebody's child. We're all the products of some people's perspectives or lack thereof. You know what I mean? So if we can now start looking at ourselves as a whole, I think we will worry less about what happens out there when we send them out there, like this place out there is this terrible place. No, the world is the world. You know what I mean? Is we what in the world need to pull up our socks. You know what I mean? But the world beautiful, providing us fruits, beautiful animals, streams, rain showers, everything that we could ever need. You know what I mean? So it's just we now have to deal with mental and the societal issues that is facing us, and we can't approach it from a single-handed perspective in terms of me only I gotta take care of my own. Because if you only take care of your own, it'll go rough on you down the line. So we look for every child as our children, you know what I mean?
Yeah, well said. Jason?
Yeah, and I believe, I endorse that. I believe that as a father doesn't just look out for his own biological children. Any child that comes in your space, there should be that level of fatherly instinct that chips in. All right, but with my daughters, especially my eldest child, she's 12, but she looks like 16, 17. It's kind of scary. As I said to you, I do work in the prison. I work in a high school, and I go to high schools right across. I run a boarding facility, so I live with boys, ages 11 to 19. I see what they do day to day. They share what they think. I was 12, I was 13. I understand what is out there. I understand also that between the teenage years, psychologists call it identity versus role confusion. So I know the dangers that lurks. And as such, it points to the importance of modeling a certain behavior and being your child's that first male that loves and sets boundaries. Because with my daughter, as she transitioned from being a toddler throughout, I had to set boundary. No longer can you lie on daddy's chest with daddy's shirt just in beard. My 5-year-old will do that. But as my daughter grows older, I set boundaries. No, you don't sit in daddy's lap like that. Among other things, she comes to me, she knows she has access to me about on the television, it seems like everything is about sex. She talks to me what is a condom and stuff like that. So that access is important, because if she don't have that access to me as a man, the truth is, out there are males who have a certain level of toxic thinking that you can be exposed to. And so I am concerned as a father. I must tell you that. But equally too, I try to play my role, because at the end of the day, as he transitions through puberty, what you find, I have to do more of less telling, but facilitating and guiding. And so my only hope now, as I see the consequences of poor choices, is that she make right choices.
Yeah.
And that's the position I'm at now.
Alex?
Well, and I agree with you in terms of, you know, setting boundaries. I would have spent a few years in the classroom, and I would have, you know, observed, because it was a, you know, a mixture boy, you know, boy-girl situation. And so I am concerned, but at the same time, I try to play my role, or I believe in, you know, playing your role, because because though they're not, you know, carbon copies of their parents,
Right.
you know, what they see at home, very important, you know, and so you guide them throughout the process that, listen, you will go out and you will see X, Y, Z, but at the same time, they will always have at the forefront of their minds what happens at home.
Yeah.
And so, you know, deeply concerned, but at the same time, we have to do what we have to do. Be present.
Yeah. Now, Jayson made some good points there, particularly around the behavior of boys, especially through puberty and adolescence. As social beings, we are all subject to various types of influences, right? The home being the primary influence, the community just next to that. And then obviously, once you're in the school system, you're spending just in the ballpark of about 8 hours in the school system. You have the influence of teachers in the school system, but you also have the influence of other students in the school system. So we're talking about a variety of influences here on behavior. Now, we've had some recent arguments about music and its influence on behavior, right? And that is something that has kind of driven a wedge between people, right? People who have one particular view, people who have another view. I'm gonna start with Jesse on this matter. What's your position on music, particularly dancehall music in Jamaica, and its influence on behavior, primarily around some unsavory behaviors? What say you on that? Can we blame the music per se, or is it more of parents not doing enough and society not stepping up to really counterbalance?
So it's a big concoction. So parenting is definitely one of the things. The way music is consumed, the unregulated industry is definitely also a thing. The political environment that Jamaica is operating under is also a thing. The lack of resources or the right uses of resources is also a thing. Like sometimes we don't acknowledge that half of the school in Jamaica underfunded. Half of the youth them what in the school them coming from homes where they can't them come without breakfast, they don't have money to buy lunch. So you have to try to teach people who are not even ready to learn. So there's so many factors that go into the reasons why Jamaicans are Jamaicans. But we must also admit that these are good and bad, because these are the same people that bust shot at Wimbledon. I'm saying tennis is one of the most what would you say? You know what I mean, most regal sports, apart from probably certain other teams. But you know what I mean, and the culture that is Jamaican is still going to be expressed because it is a part of our identity. Now, what I'm not ever going to join in terms of conversation is like the nitpicking and the pointing fingers and trying to pick where the root of the problem is, where the root of the problem started before we even had independence, if you understand what I'm saying.
Right.
We are traumatized individuals operating in a system where we still don't even fully control it. So I mean, I know everybody have, you know what I mean, we may make some money and we may have jobs, but we didn't fight for our independence, for lack of a better term. You know what I mean? So we were handed our independence with terms that were favorable to whoever the colonizer was. So just imagine some people were kings and queens one time in Africa, they ship over yourself, treated as slaves, and now we are literally trying to recover before we even start to develop. You understand? So we must also be very understanding of the stages that we are in our journey. Yeah. Just like General said just a while ago, we were all 13 years old and we know how 13-year-olds think. But we're not going to not be a 13-year-old, right? Our children are going to have to go through experiences. We're going to send them off to college one day. We're going to send them out into the world. But all we can do is ensure that they have the foundation that keeps them grounded while they're out in the world. But we can't not send them out into the world. So yes, everything influences certain behaviors, but I feel like we're still only dealing with the surface when you're talking about a song. You know what I mean? The song is really just the surface of the thing, because between now you half of these people that sing about guns in these songs have never seen a gun. You see what I said? Half of these people that are singing about being bad men have never done anything wrong in their life. You see what I said? So it's almost like a yearning for the culture that people think has been accepted and just regurgitating, which is why you have artists like myself and other artists who are showing people that there's other ways to see things, there's other ways to communicate the struggle, there's other conversations that we can have in terms of fixing things, but we're not going to really. If I'm being honest, I've seen a lot more artists do a lot more good for Jamaicans than any politician, if I'm being honest. Yeah. You see me, I say, me see artists send more youth to school than politicians. Me see artists help fix more road, give people black, take zinc off of them roof and give them slab roof and do way more things than the politicians, and these artists don't even mention. So when I say there's the good and the bad to the conversation, but if we're going to have the conversation, it has to be holistic. Yeah. You know what I mean? It can't be a blame game.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for that input. Jayson, I see you indicated you have to add to it.
I'm happy that, Jesse really commented on the issue that we did. Because personally, and I'm on the record of about saying it, that music does influence. Right. I mean, especially the youngsters. When they're developing and science really shows that the mind in itself, in terms of how it's developed, it's not fully developed when you're at a certain stage. Mm-hmm. So I believe the music influence, but I think equally as important is that we don't blame one particular sect or factor in the whole thing. We all need to come together and look at what it is that we're doing, because the truth is, on one hand, entertainers are entertainers. On the other hand, they are also public figures, and there has to be some level of, responsibility that is shared. But equally to us parents, we have a responsibility, and the list goes on, as he has pointed out. We don't need to go over that. But I believe it's something that we all must consider, all the factors. Right. And as I said, among young men especially, it does influence. Right. Because these youngsters, they go to sleep with the thing plugged in their ears, and they wake up with it. And the truth is, they listen to a mixture, conscious tune like what Jesse listened, but they also listen to a lot of the gun tune, very violent. Right. You understand? And that does something to the subconscious. Right. So it's right across the board. Which is why I kind of put the question in the context that I did, because
and not to interject, but like I was saying, we're teaching young boys that they are former slaves, not former kings and queens. So we have to also realize the place and the identity that we give into these youth. Right. People who value themselves don't do certain things. People who feel like they are valued in the society don't move certain ways. Right. So we cannot certain little things that I tell you, like the curriculum have a lot to do with the youth them who we have produced, like what we making them believe they are or their potential is super important. That we can't just wait until the man reach 18 and then lock them in a jail and think that does nothing. That does nothing. Yeah. See what I said? That's true. We can catch them early, restore them identity, show them royalty, introduce them to the level of dignity we want them move with. Then we can see, then we can really do a test. Yeah. But if we only wait until them do the wrong, till we judge who is right or wrong without understanding the ingredients that led them to that place, then we'll fail with self and country.
And future generations. Yeah. And just quickly, when I was a teenager, right, I was neck deep in hip hop. Yeah. Ready to Die is still my favorite album of all time, right? Everything what Tupac put out, we could have spit the lyrics verbatim, right? And a lot of these lyrics are violent lyrics. A lot of these, we listen holy but dance out to Bounty Killer still my favorite artist, right? And we know all the Killer album them. You can sing Killer song them word for word. But at no point in time did I ever consider going forward with a life of violence. Why? Because of all the other influences in my life, in particular, my parents. I never lived with dad in the house, but dad was always there. You know what I mean? Mom ensured that my understand here just talk about curriculum. So my understand say, okay, fine, we're coming from a history of or a lot of our ancestors were brought here as a result of the transatlantic slave trade. But before that, what were their ancestors like? So I had an understanding of where we really coming from. And I think it helped to develop my own confidence in myself, my own self-worth, and knowing that, boy, you know, certain things are just not for me. You know what I mean? And I think that's one of the big things Jesse's pointing out here, that we have a massive responsibility, not just to our children, but to the neighborhood's children, the community's children, all those at school, right? To do the right things and lead them the right way and teach them the right things from early. So when they're faced with making decisions, they can make good decisions. I mean, they'll err, but generally speaking, they'll make good decisions. Now, we had spoken to interviewed comedian Johnny Daley earlier, and he commented on the issue of masculinity and the difficulty of expressing emotions for Jamaican men, and Peter touched on it a little bit earlier. All of us here have daughters, at the very least. Yeah. We're joined by Major Basil Jarrett. Basil, how are you doing?
Good, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, man, happy to have you here with us. Basil, I'm going to start with you. I'm just going to throw in that seat right out. Sure. Your children. How many children do you have? Just remind us.
That I know of.
That's how the birds. That's 2 children.
I have 2 kids, yes. Yeah. Yes.
Ages and gender?
13 and 9, a boy and a girl.
Good.
Yes.
Now, on this matter of masculinity and so on, raising boys in Jamaica, we just spoke about the influence of music, right? And obviously, different types of lyrics will influence a boy differently than it will a girl. But you've got the pair. On that matter of expressing your emotions and while still being a man and being masculine, how are you finding that particular path coming along, that particular journey?
Well, it's funny because when I was growing up, I didn't really have a lot of opportunity to express my emotions. Suck it up. That's what men do. However, if you feel a particular way, you had to express it in the most masculine way you could. So if a girl hurt your feelings, you didn't say she hurt me. You'd say boy, she dissed me, or something to try to make it as to keep that sense of masculinity, even when you're feeling a little bit hurt. And my son teaches me this every day. I don't understand it. He is very in tune with himself. He has no problems expressing his emotions. I think he's emotionally mature for his age. And sometimes he shocks me with some of the things that he will say, because at his age I would never be able to, I wasn't able to express myself or even be aware of how I'm feeling at that time. So I think kids today, because of how the media that they're exposed to, they're much more knowledgeable than we were at their age. I think they're also much more emotionally aware. Sometimes when I hear these young people talk, I'm thinking, wow, it took me 17 years for me to be able to formulate my emotions in a way like that. So I think in that sense, we've improved with our kids. But on the other hand, and this is something that I if we can channel the discussion a little bit in this way, when we talk about the problems of men and maleness in society, it's easy to pinpoint Jamaica's biggest problem, which is the crime and the violence and all of that, and the targeted music. But the vast majority of young adults in Jamaica are not causing these problems, the violence, and there's a handful of people. Yeah, it's a major problem, and it reverberates right across society. But the vast majority of children are just young people, are good, decent, law-abiding kids who are growing up. Mm-hmm. So yes, we need to focus on the real problem, the real issues, the real big problems that are holding Jamaica back. But at the same time, there are some little things that we need to still teach our children. And one of those things is like integrity, honor, loyalty, doing the right thing, respect. These things are still very important. I know when we talk about Jamaica's high corruption index, and the average person doesn't see what he's doing as being corrupt because nobody's dying, he's not, that sort of thing. But it's contributing to part of the problem that Jamaica is struggling with. So, okay, fine, just because you're not teaching your kids not to take up the gun and be violent, there are still other important lessons that you need to teach them to help break the cycle of the struggles that we're having. Integrity, honor, loyalty, that sort of thing, doing the right thing, speaking the truth, respect, standing up if you see an old person on the bus, and you give her a seat. Little things like that I think we've missed. And it happened with the breakdown of families, and may have happened with the breakdown of the influence of the church. So as a father, I try to teach these things to my son and daughter, and hope that they get it, because I don't think it's been reinforced across society as much when I was growing up.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I want to just kind of build on that, because we're here as gentlemen who are professionals. We keep saying it, but it's important, right? What can we do? And it's something I want to kind of go literally around the table with. What more can we do with our position, with our platforms, right, in various spaces? What more can we do to emphasize the message of being, of good morals, really? And what else can we do to reach more men, more fathers, more boys? Because they are the next generation.
I think a big part of it is how you live your life sets that example. So as a member of the
But a lot of people won't see your life, Basil.
No, well, at least
influence.
I give you a simple example. As a member of the JDF, one would think that whenever I get pulled over by the police, that the police would just, oh, it's you, go on your ways. No, I respectfully, hand over my license, and if I get a ticket, I pay the ticket, and I let my kids know that even when you're in a position of influence, or you still do the right thing.
On that note, do you identify yourself as a member of the JDF when pulled over?
I give them my driver's license, and if they recognize me, then yeah, sure.
Okay.
But I would never, especially with my kids around, I would never go, hey, do you know that? No. Trust me, it's painful. I'm costly. But
it's a good example.
Yeah, it is a good example to set that no one is above the law.
Right.
No one is above the law, and it's important that they see you acting that you have to say it, but you also have to do it.
Yeah. Well, Alex, kind of pass it like that.
Oh,
Alex
sure.
was saying. Your thoughts on that question about what can we do? What else can we do?
Well,
or should we?
Well, my take on it is that we ought to live our best lives, in the sense that you can't force someone to emulate what you do, but at least in your profession, whatever you do, your social media page, what you post, because people follow us because they either love or respect, what we're pouring out. And so I try to ensure that, I set an example so that those who are looking thereon can at least see what I do. When I get a chance to interact, because I am a defense attorney and I represent males, mostly males, I talk about family life. So even sometimes I pause the matter at hand and I talk about the real issues, and I find that even, some of these,
gang cases, we talk about the real issues, and you find that one fathers were never present, right? And it's very painful to hear some of the stories, but at least you try to show them how to be better, pretty much.
Peter? Well, I'll start with the saying that they say you need to learn to dance a yard before you dance abroad. So when you think about it in your space, what is it you're showing in terms of, for me, a simple thing like arrival time at the office. You'll never find me being late for work. That's just not in the mix. No way.
We're not trying to work that.
No.
That's for security.
Common courtesies. Right. The good morning, the good afternoon. So if you see me for the first time throughout the day, don't just come talking. And if you start talking, I'm going to interrupt you by telling you what time of day. So simple things like those. Right. So we can, start by leading it a particular way, living a particular life. Last weekend I went to the country with my mom. It was amazing. A little young miss was passing and we were far from her. And she said, good morning. And the lady was standing beside us. I said, that's just strange because it's happening in the country. Yeah. But that doesn't happen in Kingston. Yeah. They walk past you as if you don't exist. So, as parents and adults, we have to, try and change things. As you mentioned, different platforms that you're on. Once we get an opportunity, I from time to time, we speak to the primary school. I use that opportunity to spread the word as to how you should live your life.
So it's about sowing seeds wherever you get an opportunity.
And if you're doing that and we are doing it effectively, maybe not my children, maybe my children's children will see the change.
Yeah. David, talking about sowing seeds, the Lord was known for visiting all sorts of spaces and sharing.
And that is what I want to touch on as well. I've been living in the Rockford community for over 30 years. And one of the things that I've seen, social intervention is good. But when the money finishes, the people leave. And as you said, relationships are important. And when you come in with a social intervention program, and I'm starting to get attached to you, and the money finishes, you go, what happens to me? Yeah. Also, the social media pages are good. But who in Rockford? Visit your social media page. Yes. You live in a community, in a gated community. Does your neighbor know your name? You live in an apartment complex. Who knows you? How can you influence me, who lives in Rockford, who is hard pressed? And one other thing I realized too, as soon as a person makes it, what do? They come out and they don't look back.
Uptown.
They do not look back. So therefore, the person who used to look up to you,
and that is what is sold,
Of course.
Make it so you can escape.
It's not
make it so you can help.
But it's bad because guess what? I may not have the education and attainment to make it like you did. So therefore, who becomes my mentor? Who else is making it that I can be like and rise above? Is it negative influences? Yes. They are making it and they don't have to go through the stress of you to break my brain in a school classroom. But they are living the same life like you. They are driving the same car. So what motivates me to do that? So therefore, what I have been encouraged several times, year after year, persons ask me, where you live? I live in Rockford. So when you move in? Yeah. When you move in? And what I notice is this. Relationships is what works. And from a church perspective, we are a church there and we're not moving. And we want to be a part of people's life.
So your thing is go ye into the world. Be there.
And your work is where you are. Yeah. So therefore, when you live your family life and your family life is good, but you're in a gated community, how does it affect me down there? Unless you come and take a walk in my community and see how I live, see and hear the challenges that drives me to do what I do. So sometimes we call in the police, we set up little chairs in there and we call the guys together, the police come and address them. We call, and I have some serious challenges. Because when I speak to the youth and the youth says, this is what I want to do, I say, SDC can do it. This is what I want to do. I say, so-and-so can do it. And I call the place and say, well, I have some youth, I want you to come and talk to. Speak to so-and-so. I call so-and-so, speak to so-and-so. I call to so-and-so, speak to so-and-so.
Yeah.
And you never get somebody to come in because of the fear that they have. And some persons are written off and say there's no hope for this one.
Right.
And until we get that, along with the social issues, it doesn't matter what we do until we start develop relationships.
Right.
And I've seen relationships work because we have worked with some and they have reached far up. Some have gotten jobs, some are in good, and they are there influencing others.
Right.
And that is what we need. Not only to live the life, but the life needs to be modeled before the persons who need that sort of influence.
Great.
Say
Jason.
quickly.
Yeah. No.
Alright.
No, go ahead.
Well, I will just latch on quickly to what Major said.
Right.
I
Because I
think
want to come back to
a part of what we need to do is to intercept toxic conversation, but our approach is key.
Right.
And I find that youngsters, young men, the shatters, whatever you want to term them, I think depending on how you approach them, they will accept what it is that you're saying. Police pulled me over already when I carried on a few of my students to Mobile. Quite a bit of them live down here because I run the boarding facility. About 12 of them. And police pulled me over and when we were back in the car, they're gonna like the police and what am I pull you over for? And I intercepted that conversation. I said, no, they're doing their job, etc., etc. So I just simply say, we must be very sensitive to where we are and intercept certain conversation. Mark, the relationship is key. And how you model your behavior, they listen to you even more. So I think we need to do a bit more of that. We're on the road, we're at the gas station, we hear certain things. Yeah, well, that's what the windscreen wiper, just intercept. Some of us are afraid to, but it's very important. Our nation requires us to step out, not you in your stay in your small corner and I stay in mine, but to be a part of the solution and away from people like Basil and other persons in law enforcement to be reactive.
Yes.
We need to be a part of it, approaching being the proactive.
All right, I'm going to take Doc and then I'm coming to you, gentlemen, Mohan and Shaw and Associates.
I'm talking it into me.
But what more can we do?
To build on what the gentleman has said, including a major that caught me, values. Values are important. I think values have declined in our society. One example that comes to mind, and it's quite so near and dear to my heart. When I used to take the bus as a high school student, they would say, give the baby mother a seat.
Right.
No, when you go anywhere, you see the patient's pregnant and you stand up at the back of the line. There is no seat, there is no go to the front, there is no pipe water, there is nothing. And in my short life, that has changed. We need to continue to enforce values in our society, not wait until it gets to a point where we're mortified at the cover of the paper. We also need to conduct ourselves in a way that people they observe.
Right.
Another example is the COVID. As a healthcare provider, it's very important that I observe the protocols. People are observing things, not having on his mask, where is the sanitizer, etc. And I have found that if you conduct yourself in such a way, people will follow the protocols.
True.
And those were I chose personal examples and work with law enforcement. But it's the same, underlying principle, we're all the same. We see a deterioration in the society, we see a deterioration in the values, and we require the services of GDF.
There you go. Absolutely. Boy, let me tell you. Let's. I really want to build on that in about time. Time's of the essence here. Now, where there are children, where there are parents, there will be differences. Yeah? And from time to time, over time, Jamaican fathers have developed a bit of a rap for not being there. So family court has become quite essential. So there are matters of custody and legal obligations and so on that have come into play. Thankfully, we are seeing more examples of good fathers about the place. And we are the number among them. We're not show off, we're better than nobody else, but the truth is, we are doing what we're doing. Let me ask you, Shaw, being a parent also entails certain legal obligations, yeah? But what does the law say about legal responsibilities of fathers once paternity is established? What is a father supposed to do once we don't say? It is a fit, you are the father.
Well, first and foremost, the father has the same rights and responsibilities as the mother. That is clear. And so, whilst maintenance is usually the most topical because, clearly I want to talk about, surviving. But it is not the only responsibility of the father the law has prescribed. The father needs to be there. And you find that the court now, in deciding, the best interest of the child, whilst they will award a certain amount for maintenance, they still want to ensure that father gets access or is present in the child's life, because we recognize that just being a financial or breadwinner is not enough.
Yeah.
You have to be there. And well, one of the drawbacks, because when you only have a father seeing the child, on weekends, I'm one of them who will say no, it has to be more than that. While sometimes it's very difficult depending on where the child is at in terms of school or whatever the case may be, we still have to ensure that one, we advocate for the father to spend a lot of time, with his or her, with his child. So responsibilities, same as the mother.
Right, so we just talk about you are the father. Right? What about when
you're not the father?
You are not the father. Because paternity fraud is, I wouldn't say common, but
full suit.
We've seen
One in every four.
We've seen some statistics.
Yes.
But most of the statistics that we've come across have to do with immigration-related matters.
Right.
So we're really not sure of what the general population is like. But if we went off that alone, it's still a thing to really consider. So what about when there are questions of paternity? What about what do you do now? I start raising this child, raising this family, and then I realize, this day and age don't match. What then? How do you push forward from there? Does it fit?
Well, it's devastating, and I encourage fathers to first, if there is any doubt as at day one, then I think you should try and satisfy yourself that you're the father. It doesn't make sense for you to, continue, go along with that doubt, and when the child reaches 12, 13, 14, 15.
That's going to end up being confrontational. Not. I mean,
It depends on how, you see, it depends on how you treat with that, particular issue. It's very troubling, but what I'm saying is that the longer you are there, you build a relationship, that trust, that confidence with the child.
Right.
And so it is even more devastating at a later stage for you to find out, this child is not my child. And I have had to represent a father in a case, and I just did not know what to say to him, because I just can't imagine, after say 11 years, because this father was actually taking care of, his child, and 11 years after, he realized that, this is not his child. So,
how important is it though, for example, for fathers to their names to be on birth certificates? Because that's another thing too. I think I saw something from RGB a few years back where it was a high percentage. I mean, it was about 25%.
Because there is a presumption, for as at day one, that if your name is on the birth certificate, then you're actually the father, right? So,
is it important though?
It is very important.
If you are actually the dad, is it important to have the name? What's the importance of that?
Yes, because you don't know what will happen, and there are instances where, for example, the father dies abruptly or suddenly, and there are issues of estate. You have to prove that John was actually the father, because then there is nothing on record. And by record I speak of official records. To say X, Y, Z. So it's very important for the child's sake, and even there's even that that psychological component. When the child goes to school and teacher takes up the birth certificate and see only the mother, name there. Sometimes they wonder, the child misbehaving or that thing hanging over. Right. Is there a father present?
It's a sense of identity.
So you need to ensure that your name is, encrypted there.
And just to kind of track back a little bit to the matter of, fathers being supportive, child support, and so on. You have any advice for parents? Because when parents are at loggerheads over custody and maintenance, it can negatively affect the child, because sometimes what parents end up doing is weaponizing the child or weaponizing the situation to hurt the other, but then who really hurts in the end is the child. What advice there?
And so parents have to be reminded that it is about the best interest of the child. It's difficult to put away, to put aside your differences, but at the same time, it's not about you. And the court treats accordingly. It's not about the mother, it's not about the father, it's about the child. So the best interest of the child shall prevail in all the circumstances. So yes, you want to, raise the child, but do you have the environment? Do you have the facilities to properly care and nurture for this child, right? Who are the persons around you, especially when you have, for example, a daughter, so the best interest of the child is what is paramount.
Does the court look out for the best interest of the child, would you say, when them kind of seem to have a little skew towards mommy?
Well, yes, because to be honest, we must face the reality. Sometimes as fathers, we don't demonstrate that stability.
How does one do that?
Ensuring that one, your home is ready. You find the time, right? Because, mothers believe it is their responsibility as at day one. Fathers have to believe that, listen, it is my responsibility to also nurture the child. So the mindset is that, as a father, I should maintain the child. But it's just more than maintenance. And so the mother will show that, listen, I am prepared to not just take care of the child, but to be there, PTA, whatever the case is, to be there right throughout. If I'm at work and I get a call to go to school, I can leave right away. But daddy has to ensure that, listen, I get the money. And sometimes when you have...
And these are things that, what I'm picking at it is that some of these things that you've mentioned aren't so easy to bring as evidence in a space like family court. You know what I mean? Especially if mommy decides, boy, really and truly, she was about to tell a flat out lie. You know what I mean? If never did it, you're at every PTA is there.
Yes.
You know what I mean? How do you demonstrate that?
It's very difficult. And I say this to say that sometimes even the makeup of the bench, because, as a male attorney, I add that male perspective in court. Right, and so I will, go at it with a judge to say, X, Y, Z, and from man's perspective, X, Y, so she will understand. But then when you don't even have a lawyer to talk for you, and it's, two females there, yes, they'll, try to be objective, but there's still that maternal instinct that the father is not really, prepared or ready enough to take care of the child in all respects, so.
Yeah.
Now, find a good lawyer.
I am a good lawyer. Peter, over to you, because we're just wrapping up this bit now around that support and finance and being there and maintenance and so on. We spoke earlier about planning, because making children is really about planning. Ideally, you should be planning your pregnancies or planning your family. But we're not always so cautious. How do fathers prepare themselves for all the eventualities of child rearing?
Well, our advice to a father who is thinking about being a father, it takes cash to carry. You have heard that saying so much time, right? And when you think about it, in order for you to even book a doc for the delivery,
or a lawyer for afterwards.
It comes at a cost, and so some amount of savings need to take place. So if it's an account, they're going to open and say, okay, we're going to put this amount aside. So we talk about paying yourself first. So the young father or to-be father start putting away funds that you're talking about expenses that he's not even seeing. So you're talking about it could be medical expenses. So an insurance plan would have to be mixed to say, when they go to the doctor, this will come into play to take care of whatever eventualities that might occur during, childbirth. So we advise them to do that, pay themselves first and, put a plan in place to take care of anything along that line. In doing that, they have to remain disciplined. A lot of persons, when you think about it, and maybe both of you will see that myself grew up in a garrison community as well, just want to have a youth.
Yeah.
And that's the mentality.
Okay, proof say you're a man.
Yeah, proof say you're a man. But having a youth, and I think maybe that's one of the problems we are facing as a country, you have guys or children having children. They weren't ready for this. And from a financial standpoint, it's not there as well. So when they have this child, can't take care of them financially, they end up doing things that they're not supposed to be doing and become a nuisance to someone else. So the security forces have to get in the mix, the lawyer have to get into the mix, and the list goes on and on. But if they had planned in place in terms of putting, like for instance, a financial budget in place to say, okay, this is going to be when they go to school, this is going to come into the mix to take care of
my little money with me and me can't save nothing out of that. How that work?
Well, when you talk about a little bit in terms, I just remember a song just now in terms of a little bit of money, it doesn't matter how small it is.
Is that true?
I mean that. I say why I say that. So even here in terms of Scotiabank, we offer a product that's $3,500. That's the smallest in terms of your pay. And that gives you a coverage of $500,000 in terms of insurance. That's protection. So just think along the line that you could pay $3,500, and that is a plan you're putting in place.
Monthly premium?
Monthly premium. That's the minimum. If you want more, we can have a discussion with an officer and you can get more. But I'm just saying, when you think about a little bit in terms of what you earn, you just have to change as to how you go about it. You cut on certain things, You want to eat oxtail, but no, you can't eat oxtail. You might have to eat it or something like that. But you understand, but you will have to change because once you're becoming a father, your responsibility is changing as well, and you have to take care of your family. So that's your role, Remember, a child didn't ask to come into this world. You went and you did whatever to get them here. And as such, you have to plan for it. And if you're not planning for it financially, then we're going to have a strain. And then the strain becomes someone else's problem.
No, but then when you talk about insurance not scam Peter, man. Me pay all of this money and
Good point. The plan I mentioned just now is one of maybe my favorite. Why? It has two components. It has a cash value and it has the insurance component. So for the person who is thinking, okay, I'm going to be paying this money and nothing don't happen so I don't benefit, insurance is twofold. So it's protection. So in the event of you passing, that's where the insurance, the coverage will come into mix. But you live for a particular life, 15, 20 years, compounding effect. The cash value is there for you to draw down on.
Okay.
So when you really think about it, insurance is a necessity. Everyone should have one.
Which means you have a job to demystify this matter of insurance, because I can tell you that on the ground, a lot of people I talk to don't believe in insurance at all.
And that's why for every opportunity, even coming here today, I jumped at it because I see this is an avenue that persons will be listening on to know that, guess what? You need to have an insurance plan as a part of your portfolio. That's a must.
I hear a lot of people talk about investing in stocks and so on. Even for people with limited means, yes. Is that a possibility?
Yes, and so you're looking at what you earn. So you decide whatever it is. It's some for insurance, some for investment. A simple thing like, the fact that we're speaking about fatherhood, even your child, when they reach a particular age, your gift to them could be an investment instrument, buying even stocks. So whatever they say, you're going to basically form the behavior there to say, from time to time you need to purchase this additional stock. And over time, we're talking about the long haul, they will have a lot saved. So we are for that, and no matter what the amount is, you start little and the compounding effect will work for you.
So we're talking about legacy now and deadlift.
Yes.
Generational wealth. We hear all these other types of phrases being strewn around.
Yes.
It's not just for those who are of means.
No. So I read an article recently where it spoke about persons living in the States, and you wonder wealth passing down, and it's a lot to do with insurance and investments that were there. So when you think about, let's use an example, someone who's parent or grandparent had a plan in place and it had 100 million for argument's sake as a coverage. Because that is in place and there is a beneficiary involved. When that person passed, that you're talking the fortune passing down the street. And if you're able to put plans in place, that's exactly the same thing you'll be doing for your children. Because if you think about all of us sitting here, if our parents had similar, like $100 million plan, and we inherited it now because they're passed, it would put us in a better financial position.
But also, we have to be careful not to pass on our debt because you can also inherit that, can't you?
Yes, and that's why the investment side is always good because it's twofold. So even when they pass and they would have left whatever plan in place, you inherited that plan. That plan now can be used to clear whatever debt involved. So it's always good for you to do something in terms of form of investment, insurance, products that your children can benefit from it.
Absolutely. I think that's very, very well said. One thing I will credit my father for doing is that in his will, I wasn't allowed to touch a certain portion of money until my firstborn.
My point. You see that?
Came, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was a good thing because he died when I was 24 and I can tell you I blew through that money. A lot of it, I should say. Right? But it's important that we all teach our children the importance of saving. Thank you very much, gentlemen. I know that you're officially now on borrowed time, right?
Oh, yes.
But now, Basil, I have to come to you because what you do is absolutely important. Yeah, part of getting through to young men and building them into wholesome adults is teaching integrity. You touched on that a little earlier. What are some steps and strategies that could work for potential fathers and even for some of us here to build character?
Well, God, I'm going to come at it from a different angle. You said something a few minutes ago. What about the situation where you are not the biological father?
Right.
And we'll look at it from a different perspective. Now, there are many men walking around who have no biological kids, not that they know of.
Right.
But they have the potential to be fathers as well. And what I mean by that is the work that we do at JC, the Old Boys Association, and I extend it to my friends at KC Calabar, etc.
They're here.
Some of them are here.
Some of them are
There's a KC man in this room. I hope not. What the work that we do is to father those kids who may not have the best role models, the best father figures around them. You don't have to be a father to father. So the work that we do in the Old Boys Association, speaking for JC and everybody else out there, is that we try to teach those boys coming up through the school system who may not have the best examples at home. We show them good examples. We try to teach them the right and wrongs when we come around. It's not just about winning Manning Cup and winning champs. I mean, yes, it feels good to be Manning Cup champion and champs and have the champs crown, but the work that we do at JC is much deeper than that because we know just how many of our boys don't have that support at home. So when you talk about things like character and integrity, we spend a lot of time with them, especially in sports, not just because we want to win, but because sports teaches character, it teaches integrity. You can win and win ugly. You can lose and feel better than when you won. Cheating, corruption, that sort of thing. These are lessons that we try to instill.
Where can fathers who are hearing or will hear us, where can fathers who want to build these things in their sons and in their daughters, but don't necessarily have the resources at hand, so to speak, find?
And it's a major problem because this thing isn't taught in schools. I mean, to my knowledge, no one teaches you how to be a father. You just sort of have to, look at your example and you try to learn and build it along the way. There isn't a fathering 101 in high school. There's where do you go to learn that? And I think when you're faced with that challenge, how can I raise this child in the best way that I can? And you have to look back to what your moral compass tells you is the right thing. Peter mentioned it. Yes, money is important, but time is money. And if you seriously sit down and assess the most influential people in your life, or not the people who gave you the most money or who left this behind for you. I hope that when I die, my kids don't remember me because daddy left this, that, or the other for it, but they remember that daddy was there. So for those fathers who are struggling, it's not a science. I'm not perfect, but I know right from wrong. And when I parent in a way that is wrong, I know it. I know it and I recognize it and I try to correct it.
Would you agree that parenting should be taught in school?
Absolutely.
Part of the curriculum?
Absolutely. I don't know if we're afraid that if we teach it, kids are just going to have, our kids are going to start having a lot of kids. No, it needs to be taught.
Yeah.
At my age, I'm still learning. How did I learn to be a father? Well, I just did what my father didn't do. You understand? And too many of us are out there parenting on that basis. So absolutely, perhaps we do need to teach parenting that is not just about having kids. What does it mean? And planning for it financially and getting the right values there. It's a major problem. It's a major problem. In fact, I go one step further and say that, and I'm biased to the boys because of where I am, but our women are also at risk because those same young girls are going to be the ones who grow up and want to find men of integrity and that sort of thing, good men to marry. So it's a collective effort. But no, I don't have all the answers. I'm still learning it. Perhaps we do need to teach parenting, fatherhood, motherhood in schools formally.
Yeah, good. Now, gentlemen, I'm going to come around the table. So again, we're going to start with you, Basil. And I'm onto the microphone. We hear about the joys of parenting, and I'm sure there must be a lot of joy that we've all experienced as fathers. So I'm going to ask right around the table, the greatest joy and the biggest lesson you've learned. Just keep it as succinct as you can, but the greatest joy, greatest lesson that you would have learned as a father.
When my son corrected me, there was a particular situation, and I was wrong, and he said, "Daddy, no. You sound very entitled. Don't do that again." At 12. And I called his mother and I was like, "I think my son just disciplined me." That's when I knew that, one of us, maybe not me, but one of us was doing something right. When he stopped me and he corrected me.
Yeah.
I think I'll always remember that.
Good. Alex?
Well, my joy, I think whenever I actually reach home, and I see those, those little happy feet, start moving and they smile and she's stretching. There's nothing. I think that to me is incomparable. There's nothing else that can, make me feel more excited. I want to go home because I want to see her, and that is, her impression the first time. So I think listen, I'm still learning. Pretty much to be patient, because sometimes she's crying incessantly, and I'm wondering what is wrong with this child. So I have to be walking up and down, and so my wife tells me that I am impatient. But having this child, I have to learn to be patient and just deal with it. Because listen, I can't send her to grandma or whoever. I have to keep her and ensure that I do the best that I possibly can.
Joy. Okay. So for me, I'm a stickler for the books, and so both children are aware of that. So whenever they deliver, in terms of on whatever exams, that gives me a lot of pride and joy. I like when they are winning, and in whatever they're doing. Once they're winning, just give me that peace, and how they see me as well. They believe I can do everything for them, so they see me as this superhero. I remember buying a Crocs, and that's those widgets that goes on it, and everybody was buying, I bought for them, and they picked my widget, and to my surprise, what they put as my widget was a Superman symbol. So that, I was taken aback to know that, that's how they see me, to know that, I'm their guard, their superhero, will do anything for them. So, when I think about it that way, it gives me that peace of joy.
That's so much.
As I said, I've made so many mistakes as a parent, and one of the joys that I have is that when you try to teach a lesson, and it is learned, My daughter, when she makes mistakes or does something wrong, we have such a relationship that she's not afraid to just come to me and just fess up on anything. And then she would look at me and say, Daddy, please help me to be better.
Yeah, awesome.
For me, no matter how bad the day, or if I leave out just for 2 minutes, 5 minutes, the response, that is home. There's something about that. You know, it's just sometimes, you know. 2, when my daughter, she knows she has access, she speaks to me about anything. Sex, a boy that she likes at this age, I'm happy about that. One of the biggest lessons is not being afraid to say to my children, especially my eldest, I'm sorry. That in itself is a life lesson. That's all.
Good.
Oh boy, this is a question. Do I learn everything too soon? The greatest joy, my daughter smile. Yes. As you mentioned, when you come home and she smiles and she says, Daddy's home. That one is difficult to beat.
Make it all worth it.
Yes, the greatest lesson. Structure. Yes. Because especially as you're passing through medical training, it's easy to just be consumed by everything. Just alright. You're always at work, you're always on the go. Somebody's always calling you, somebody's always doing it to me. But now that I have my own family, I know how to find some structure so that I can find some time for them. Right. Left its own devices, my job will consume me.
Right, of course, it's definitely very demanding. For me though, biggest joy, I think, would be to see how my children have literally become who they are. They're extremely kind, very considerate, very mannerly. So I know that somewhere along the line, mommy did good. They get the sense of humor from me, so they're always at me with the corniest stuff jokes, and every time they come to me, I say, "Oh my God, look at what you've done," you know. But that for me is just a big joy to really see how they've developed, and to hear from their teachers and even their peers in class. So I mean, they're class leaders, and they always have this little thing and that little thing and so on, and they've been appointed to various positions of responsibility in their schools, and I'm very happy to see that. I'm super excited by that. And I think in that is the biggest lesson to me as well, to really just always be the right example for them to emulate. And this pandemic has kind of brought us together as a family even more. Every day, I had a very active social life. Still do, but it's more online, right? But I would be out and about because it's the nature of what I do. But then I'd get home very late sometimes, and it's mainly on the weekends that I get to spend time with them. The pandemic locked me down, and now every day we dine, we have dinner at the same time every day. Between 6 and 6:30, we gathered at the table. And my son, after about 3 days of that, said, "Daddy, you know what we should do every day? We should toast." I'm like, yeah? I mean, because he sees when my friends come over and we play dominoes and with cheers and all sorts of things. He's like, "Daddy, we should toast, we should drink to something every day." And every day, we get our glasses of water or whatever it is that we're drinking and to the Williamses, and then he'll add something, or my daughter will add something. And I had COVID in February, so I could not. So
thought you were immune.
No, this is pre-vaccination. But I was unable to dine with them in the evenings, and my son took it terribly. The young man would barely touch his meal. So what I ended up having to do now was go into the dining room, just at the edge of the dining room, and I raise my glass and everybody else.
I'm here.
Right? and then they eat and I'm back to my quarters because that's literally what it felt like. Back to my quarters to have my meal. And sometimes I'd pop in or he'd turn on his tablet and we'd just FaceTime in the house and I'd keep his company or keep their company at the table, and that's how he would get through his meal. So I realized the very close-knit bond that we have all formed as a family. But for me to see him raise that idea, I was like, wow, this kid, you know, really has a good sense of family and togetherness and unity. And that really brought tears to my eyes at one point. I was thinking about him. I said, boy, youth, you know, say, you can't, thank you so much. Can't say, me never do a decent little work in the youth life, you know?
Yeah.
And these are the little moments like that. You know, I mean, it was difficult to ask you all for one. I know, because it really is a list, you know. But I think, gentlemen, as long as, and for those who are watching, as long as you're there, Alex said it as a lawyer, be there. Teach these things to your children. Let them see you. The way your son treats women is based primarily on how him see daddy treat mommy.
What your model?
Right? The way your daughter deals with men is based on what you show her as well. Also what you say, but definitely what you show. So it's very important for us to recognize the awesome responsibility that we have as fathers in the lives of our children and the community's children, because it's not just our youth them. We're not raising them in our bubble, them have it in our bigger society. Right? And if each one can reach one and teach one, then we can keep pushing that message further. Any parting shots, gentlemen?
I said it well.
So I closed it well?
Yeah, yes, man. Yeah, man, yeah.
So, on behalf of Christopher Johnny Daley, on behalf of Jesse Royal, who were not physically present with us, but certainly were able to participate in this activity, Basil Jarrett, Alex Shaw, Peter Mohan, David Goodlitt, Jayson Downer, Jordan Hardie. I'm Garth Williams, and we thank you, Observer, we thank you, All Woman, for hosting this roundtable forum for fathers. We hope that it will bring benefit, massive benefit, to everyone who watches. And to all the ladies, just know that there are lots of very good men, very good fathers, Jamaican, black fathers, who are here, who love our children, who love our country, and love our future, and want to participate in building a wonderful future for our country. So again, we thank you so much, and we wish you all the very best. Happy Father's Day, gentlemen. We wish you long life. Take care.
Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers. Yes, indeed.